We're so excited to introduce you to Dustin James, who's an intuitive, clairvoyant, and energy reader. Dustin can see the energy within and around people, which allows him to pinpoint blocks so that he can help them gain clarity around personal relationships, career paths, or whatever is holding them back from moving forward. Dustin has spent his life using his abilities to guide and inspire thousands of people, including business leaders, to make their impact in the world. When we spoke with Dustin last, we knew we met another member of our soul family. It was an instant connection, and we can't wait for you all to get to know Dustin as well. Hi, Dustin.
Hey.
Hi, member of our soul family.
I'm so happy to have found my tribe. It's so rare to find your people, and you are definitely my people.
We feel the same way.
Totally.
We're so thankful to our friend Claudia for connecting us.
Oh, she's an angel. She's an actual angel.
She is.
Yeah.
Tell us, how did you come into your gifts and how did they end up impacting this life's journey so far?
Ooh, that's a big question because I've spent most of my life running from my gifts. In corporate America, I've tried to hide in creative agencies. I've tried to hide building my own web company. I've tried to do everything but, and it kicked on at like 3, if you really want to know. So the first experience was very visual experience. I remember it like yesterday, very visual. And then throughout my childhood, my mom would have this game, just ask Dustin. If you lost your keys or if the neighbor was having boy trouble or whatever it was, it would be like this game. And she'd pull me out of hide and seek. And she's like, hey, she's dating this guy. Should she break up with him or not break up with him? And she's sitting on the porch crying. And I just would look and I could feel impressions. I'd see impressions. And it looks to me like liquid. It's almost like watching a movie, but it's very liquid. It's very 4-dimensional in a sense. I don't just see it. I feel it. I can zoom around. It's like a camera that can move around it. And then I would get a flood of information. I would just quickly look at her and say, no, break up with them because of X, Y, and Z. And then I'd say, can I go off and play now? And I'd continue hide and seek.
Stop it. I mean, wait a second.
Wow.
When you were 3, what did you see at that point? And did you tell your mom right then that you were seeing any, or did you even think it was weird?
So that one is
right. I assume it's your mom, you're older.
Yeah.
But
the first one is 3. So that one happened. It was almost like someone shined a big projector on my wall next to my bed. And it wasn't anything special in a sense. It was just these 2 guys in a garage with lots of motor parts or mechanics. And they were just wrenching on something like a jet engine or something. It was weird. And I just called for her and she came and she said, no, that she comforted me. She said, no, that's a dream. That's a dream. But I'm not anywhere near those ages anymore. And it's just like yesterday. Well, what that was is something, it was almost like a flare shooting up because it was going to save me from an experience later in life.
Oh, wow.
And it came in sync. And that helped me understand like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what this is. But again, not only did I just see it, I could feel the energy dynamics around that garage or those 2 men, how they felt individually, what was at play. And that's very key here because I can't tell you how many clients come to me and say, well, it looked good on paper. The job looked good on paper. The relationship looked good on paper. Moving to another state looked great on paper. I don't understand why I'm depressed and I don't feel good. That's the big thing here because it doesn't matter what you're presented with, what looks good on paper. It's very much the energetics of what you're saying yes to and very much the energy pool that you're about to enter. And for me, I like to read those things, or I've had abilities and capabilities to read them prior to you making these decisions. So you don't take a detour in a sense. So you're not doing it for the money, or you're not doing it for going out with someone because of lust. You can only get that same vibrational match back from that frequency or signal. So I'm very good at reading the energy dynamics around things, how the atmosphere will feel, and how that's going to impact the people involved and the world at large.
Wow. So tell us a little bit more about that. Is that something that you kept doing your whole life?
I'm going to go back to that, then talking about, then fast forward a little bit when your mom is playing that game with you throughout your childhood. When did she recognize that there was something else going on? Or did she also have any sort of gift herself?
Well, she kind of blocked it. Yes and no. So she didn't do it often. We did it enough to where we lived in a home that was very active in a sense. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I just came in from hockey practice one time and there was this woman in our kitchen and I didn't know who she was. And our house smelled funny. And then I went up to my room to put my skates down and there was a bowl of water with weird stuff in it. And then I felt an emptiness, like there was something missing or someone missing. And they said, well, we had this thing in the house and it attacked your sister. And I remember her saying later how she felt like there was this presence and it kept sort of attacking her. But what it was doing is protecting us from her, because she was sort of going out with these older guys and bringing it back into the home and whatever it was. So she brought in a spiritual friend from school, and we didn't know what spiritualism was, but we did know that there was definitely forces around us that you couldn't see. People call them ghosts and whatever. So from that on, it's really my aunt. I have an aunt, Vicky. She is very, very psychic, very aware, very all the stuff, but she actually, my uncle Denny is not, and they've been married over 50 years. And so she'll say, I told Denny to go buy that lottery ticket and he didn't do it, or he didn't do it on time, and then the numbers will hit or something like that. Or she also lived in a very active house where there would actually be physical things that would be moved, and they would just be like, oh, that happened again. So they were always aware. I believe my mom shut it down because my grandmother actually was super aware, and she would, I think probably as a game to play with the kids back in the day, she would try to with the kids. So she'd bring the kids in and she'd do, like, I don't know if they call them seances or whatever, but she would try to feel the impressions, feel the home. I think they probably also lived in an active home. So that was there, but it wasn't dominant in my household at all. And in fact, I remember going to see a psychic in San Diego, and he was this English gentleman by the name of Chris Meredith. Really, really good. The best, one of the best that I've come across. And it was the day I went to go see him, and he said that I was also psychic. He said, well, you can do all the things that I'm doing. He's like, not just psychic, you're also very clairvoyant, and all the clairs are there, and all these gifts and all these abilities. And I remember running home, and I lived in Laguna Beach at the time. So I drove back to Laguna. I called my mom and I said, I just met a psychic. He told me I'm psychic. And she was just really quiet. And then she's like, oh yeah, I believe that. And at the same time, I looked, and my clairvoyance literally kicked in at that moment, because there was something around me. And I turned and I looked, and I could see through the wall there, and there was something looking in. So I could, again, there's these things around us. And when we're extra sensitive, or we know how to kick on these certain abilities, whether it's clairvoyance or clairsentient or just a knowing, then you'll perceive these other beings or life forms that are just within a click of a dimension away, I believe. So
did you know what clairvoyance? Everyone listening may not. Can you explain it?
Yeah. So I didn't know what it was either, and I had to go home and look it up. Actually, it started when I was dating a girl, and her parents were like, you're really clairvoyant. Every time we mention your name, you call. Anytime you mention, you're just knowing it. So clairvoyant is clear vision. So it's when you see things. So I see things in imagery. I also hear things. There's clairaudient. So audience, when you'll hear something. Sometimes I'll hear, it's like when you leave the house and there's a voice in your head that says, but better grab a jacket. It's going to be cold later. And you're like, it's 80 degrees. It's not cold. And then later on, you're at dinner, you're like, shit, I should have got that jacket. But yeah, for me, the visuals have always been there. So I had to work on shutting down, because I would be on a hiking trail in LA or Laguna or wherever I was at the time. And there would be like a jogger that would jog past me. And all of a sudden I'd get a barrage or a flood of imagery about his life. And I would just like, oh my gosh, what was that?
I was going to ask how you walk through life.
It was tough. And there would be times where I would be dating somebody. And I remember we moved to San Francisco, and I was sleeping on the couch for like a week, and she got really mad. And she said, why are you doing this? And I didn't tell her all of it, but I was doing it because every time I laid next to her, I would start to see the imagery of her next relationship.
Oh my God.
It was like really tough for me. I couldn't, because it's just energy. You're an energy being, and you're mixed with their aura, their energetics. And when I touch people now, if I just go up and touch their hand, then I'll tap in much faster, and I can see all the things about them, all the things that I need to see in order to help them, their needs basically. And so we're just these big conduits of energy. And when we connect and you say yes and they say yes, there's that connection. I believe that's sort of in romance, when we meet somebody and all of your systems are all yes, all open, and all their systems are all yes and all open. That's when you get that euphoric magnetism, when we call it the honeymoon phase and all that. And there's a ton of you and them just being sort of merged at that time. You're getting a lot of them, they're getting a lot of you, and you become that one. That's when people say, we're one. And to me, that's just being an openness. When you go in, you're a little closed off around the heart. There's all these different degrees of where people, their developments are and where they can date. And that's based on openness, right? And trauma shuts that stuff down. So that's typically where my modalities sit now, is after learning Reiki, studying Reiki years, that's just energy work, and also doing sessions with people and can read them. I realized that I really needed to learn some more modalities like biomechanics, applied kinesiology, and ways to help clear a lot of the trauma that the body holds. So you could hold trauma in the shoulders. Hip flexors are big with that. Knees. This is why shoulders, knees, hips go out, because we hold a lot of trauma. So there's the physical body and there's the energy body. And when that gets overflowed flown, things will just start physically breaking down. So there's ways and modalities to help clear that, and through the meridian system and all that jazz.
I love how you've integrated all those different modalities into what you do. Can you just give our listeners a sense of how you work and what a session is like with you?
Yeah, they're all a tailored approach. I work off of someone's needs. So it's very much, my whole thing is of service. I've now realized that this is what I'm best at. I realized that hiding out in corporate America wasn't behooving me. And I've taken all the things that I've learned along the way, and I've just sort of fit those to each person. So it could be a session. Let's say someone brings me in for like a 15-minute meeting, right? I can do a lot in that 15 minutes. We can address things, we can find solutions, we can detect things. And if we're in person, maybe it's some more time. We'll need some time to help clear it. So let's say I come in using abilities, clairvoyance. I can see that you have certain things that you're housing in your energetic field, your aura, right? Because your aura is this big archive. You ever ask somebody, hey, tell me about last weekend's trip? They might look up and to the left or to the right. They're actually pulling the file of where they stored that in their energy field. And then they start telling you the story. So a lot of times there's these hot spots or things that sort of get clogged or bog a person down. So you get brain fog and your thinking abilities go out, your motor skills go out, all this stuff. There's modalities to help clear that. So it could be, again, addressing the blocks and then finding solutions to help do that. So yeah, go in with clairvoyance, detect it, and then work through Reiki, again, working through the meridian system. Sometimes it's just running a massage gun in certain points of the meridian system and allowing that hip flexor to let go of the trauma that the person has stored there. And it could be sexual trauma. Usually that's in and around the hips. It could be around career. Your left shoulder will hold funerals, loss, sadness, depression. So there's all these parts where it depends on what you're storing. They'll go to these typical spots.
It's fascinating. I'm just wondering, do they come to you with a specific ask? In other words, I'm dealing with trauma, I'm dealing with grief, I'm dealing with pain. Is it a specific thing that you're looking for to treat? Or is it you just kind of read into them when you have your first one-on-one?
Yeah, most people don't know. A lot of times I always ask, hey, how's it going? And like, oh, I'm fine. And I'm like, well, if you're seeing me and paying me money, there's something up. So I'm like, all right, session's done. Let's go later. So what I'll do is I typically start with the colors in and around someone, because everything you think of, you're big producers, right? So whatever you think, whatever you allow in your airspace, which is your life, whoever you allow in there, whatever careers, whatever you're doing, it creates energetic colors. So the energy spectrum runs from high to low, just like a color spectrum. So the more pastel colors I'll see around somebody that they house in their energy field, the more illumination, the more high vibration, more harmonious vibe that is. And then the lower stuff, I might see a deep dark red in and around their heart with a bit of black in it. And then I'll detect the colors first, because energy doesn't lie. It's not biased. It doesn't care. It's sitting in and around you. And then when I move into that energy and I can see it, then I'll look at why that's happening. So then I'll get the imagery of maybe them sobbing. And then the next image could be around a male figure. And then it will show me his personality and where he sits vibrationally. And then why he's disconnected or why they're not a fit. Maybe things that he's holding back. So it's everything that you've said yes to, that you house, you've archived. And I can move through, or anyone actually has this ability to move through that network or their network of people. So we could address the romance issue and then say, well, this is where it sits. This is why it came in. This is why you're not getting forward motion with it. He's closed off. He's maybe cheating or whatever that is. Or it could be maybe around a loss, a family member that's passed on, right? Grief, sadness. And then it could be around career. But really what's great is business, is people have these wonderful businesses and big corporations, but they often most likely hire the wrong people, because again, they're looking what's good on paper. They're looking for who's correct, who's created a nice resume and has wonderful references, but maybe they're not the person for the job, or maybe they're just in the wrong department. So I'm really good at detecting what departments are bogging down, what campaigns are working, ones that they should do or not do, when they should release them. It's like, I live here in LA now, and if I get hired on certain projects, let's say take the movie Cloud Atlas. It's one of my favorite movies because it talks about soul groups. However, they had all these stars, studded names in it. They had the wardrobe was on point. Everything was great. However, it was 45 minutes too long and they had too many stories in there. So if they brought me in as a consultant, I would have said, look, it's like this, it's like that. We need to shave it there and there. These are your spots that are bogging it down. If they cut it together and they listened, it'd come out and be hit, because it already was, but it just, there was parts that bogged it down. I got hired at publishing companies and they would say, hey, I have this really big client. They're well known. They have a TV show and they have this book that's coming out. However, they're really strict on this font, but what do you think? I can feel which one's going to be a better impact in the world, which one's going to be more received. And it's very much about being of service. So it's saying, how will illuminate for their listeners? How will it shine against their competitors? And that would ramp up book sales, and that would just be a better impact in the world, because if the information in there is sound and it's helpful, I'm all for it. And so my gifts sort of allow me, because I did hide out in corporate America, and I can
will you talk about that for a moment? Because I'm assuming that led to Crossroads for you.
Yeah, so I met a girl, and the first thing I wanted to do is I want to provide. And I was watching a lot of Mad Men at the time. So I was like, oh, marketing, it was in this big space, one of the biggest industries on the planet. And they relocated us. And I was like, okay, well, this is it. I met this girl. This is the way. This is what I'm going to do. And this is going to feed my soul. And I don't have to go around being known as this holistic person that half the culture doesn't even believe in because of their religious beliefs or whatever that is. I just kind of wanted to fit in. And that was the problem. I don't fit in. I can't fit into that box. I'm actually more, I guess, bigger than that in a sense, because where I sit is I can fit into all these different places. I can consult in all these different levels. And so the crossroads was I was trying to go against my purpose and passion and natural abilities. So, and truly what I'm great at and what I love to do naturally. And I did it for other reasons. And I started to break down physically. So I had rosacea on my forehead for about 2 years. I saw every dermatologist, all these people, they couldn't get rid of it. I did acupuncture, did all these things. Nobody could figure it out. The moment I decided to quit and move away, come back to California and do what I love, it cleared up within a week.
Wow.
And my body was physically breaking down. So there was the crossroads of saying, hey, you're going in the wrong direction. Again, you're trying to run from, just so you can say you're in marketing instead of being a holistic person at dinner parties. You're trying to fit in again, and you don't fit into these small categories. You're not just a marketing strategist or a campaign manager or a director of whatever. You're not that. You can actually work with these people in a much larger capacity. And so when I sort of went off on my own, I think I finally did it. So I didn't listen right away. I left that company and went to another company in the government space. And again, just hit more walls. And then eventually, I think I got fired. And actually, they're really cool. The boss was like, listen, gotta let you go because the numbers aren't there. But they weren't listening to my campaign strategies anyway. So it was like oil and water. And he said, but what are you going to promise me something? I said, what's that? He's like, you're going to go out and do whatever you're great at. And I said, I will. And that was October of 17. And I haven't looked back.
Wow.
How long did it take you?
The software company in Texas, it was just under 3 years, but it felt like 5 or maybe 10. And then I left and went to San Francisco because I was in tech and I thought, oh, well, tech's booming over there. I can just, translate. And at this point, the relationship was falling apart. Things were crumbling. Just everything was moving, but it wasn't in a bad way. It was actually making room for all this new stuff, this new growth.
That's what I was going to say. It was like the universe almost gave you a gift by kicking you out of that job.
Yeah. And the next one was literally under 2 years. It always felt longer. Now when I work, the days just fly by.
How did you hone your craft?
Decades of experience.
I'm sure people want to know from the time you're playing Ask Dustin.
And did it start with Reiki? Was that sort of your gateway or was it something else?
Yeah, actually the Reiki bit. So I went out to do an ionic foot bath with someone. They're like, hey, ionic foot bath. I'm like, what's that? And they're like, oh, you put your feet in water as a coil. It pulls all the heavy metals and stuff out the feet because all the muscles in the bottom of the feet are connected to all the organs and, blah, blah, blah. I said, great. And so we go to this place in Laguna and there's a woman there and she's from Australia. And I was in my foot bath and she came into the room and she just on the floor and just kind of looked at me and she just started like kind of gazing a bit at me. And I was like, okay. And then she said, you're not using your gifts, are you? And she said, you're gifted and you're not using your gifts. And I just kind of like held my cards even closer then. And I was like, what do you mean?
I'm
and
normal.
I'm normal. I'm just an average Joe. And she's like, no. She's like, no. And then she showed me, she's like, you got some stuff on your right shoulder. She came over there and she did her Reiki bit. She just put her hands on my shoulder and she pulled some stuff out of it. And then my shoulders dropped. And I'm like, whoa, what was that? And I had this, it's almost like a deep breath, just sigh came out of relief. And she said, that was all the stress of hiding from the world.
Gosh. Oh,
and then I was lopsided like this. I had one shoulder up and I was like, okay. I was like, can you do the other one?
Yeah, seriously.
And she did. And then later she said, look, she said, I house once a week. I do these guided meditations. I do them here in the studio. She said, you're welcome to come. And I come along. And so I did. And I stuck with her for about 8 months. And in that, she taught me, brought me up the levels of Reiki where I was working on her clients. I mean, these were like big name people in the world, fashion designers, names that you would know. And when I would touch them, I would see, again, the imagery would kick on. The moment I touched them, I would see where the trauma was, why it was there, when it happened, what age, and then solutions of how to clear it or how to move it along. That's the thing. We typically hold on to our trauma, or the body does, because A, we're not ready to let go. Sometimes we think that we identify with that trauma and we feel like if we let go, then we were letting go of our own identity, our own story, when really there's more stories to create here. It's like movies. You don't just watch one movie or one show. Like there's more, right? There's more to experience. So, I learned a lot through her. And then she said, look, I know why you shut it all down. You couldn't control it. And I lived in a tumultuous childhood where I think that that's really how I did hone them. The abilities really came in for survival. And she said, but you're not experiencing that anymore. And I can help you now turn it on, turn it off. When you sit with people and read them, how to open up, and then how to create boundaries, and then not allow their stuff to come into you to affect your life. And so I've taken a lot of what she taught me. Her name's Gabriel. She's back in New Zealand now. And I've done that along with finding my own hobbies and things that I can break away. So for me, it's all about at work, and then I go and I surf, or I go scuba diving, or I go hiking, or I go to coffee shops and work on my laptop like any other screenwriter in here in Los Angeles. And I just blend in a sense. Those are my escapes. And then when I'm on the clock, I come in and I'm of service. It's very much being of service. And I'll say no to people. Some people will come in and say, hey, am I going to make $1 million this year? I say, I don't know. There's a question mark. And if I don't like the vibe or their intentions of why they want to do it, I'll walk away and say, I can't, I'm not going to work with you. But if I can tell them some information and say, look, this is what's bogging you down. It could be like the marketing people you hired. I won't leave them with nothing. I'll get to their needs, but I won't feed into if their intentions, if they're wrong, if they're not going to help, if they're more self-indulging.
Have you ever worked with somebody where they came in and their energy was sort of in one place and you kind of saw an outcome as a result of their energy, and that really got to shift their energy and the outcome vision that you had for them completely changed?
Absolutely. Actually, going back to Gabriel, the first client, professional client, because I was reading since I was a kid, in a sense, not professionally, but I could see things, perceive them. So I got like 50,000 hours logged as a practitioner. But with her, so she said, I'm going to bring in a friend, and he sat down in front of me. And the moment we started working together, I could see his household and how it was, and his questions. He wanted to be an entrepreneur and he wanted to be successful and all this stuff. But I saw where he was bogged down, and he smoked a lot of weed. And I asked him, I said, I see red plastic cups and bongs in your home. And he just laughed. I said, I see video games out and live in a certain lifestyle, more of a toxic lifestyle, and with laziness and all that stuff. And I said, look, what you're trying to do, I just don't see it happening for you. I see a wall. I see a dead end. And he said, well, why? What can I do to make it better? And then that's when I said, well, it's your lifestyle. And he said, well, what is it in particular? I said, it's marijuana. It's weed. You can't do it. It's cutting all of your wonderful gifts that you have. It's clouding your vision and your judgment and who you're going to do business with and how you think it's going to be as opposed to how it is. And he said he was so keen on being a successful entrepreneur in the world. And that moment he made a decision and he said, that's it. I'm done. I'm giving up weed. He was just dead serious. He drew a line in the sand right then and there. Instantly, I saw the video games rolled up and put away. I saw the red cups disappeared out of his place. I saw the cloud around him change. And then I saw new handshakes, new faces, new money coming in a healthy way. Again, it's always about being service to healthy outcomes. And it changed for him the moment he genuinely made a decision from his core out.
Well, and to that point, going back to what you said, which I think a lot of people, whether or not they can accept that they do this, that idea of being married to your story and those cycles, like that idea of you identify with that victim mentality or whatever that traumatic story is. What if you are able to help them clear that block? Is it the same type of thing where you then see a different outcome for them? Are you able to help clear those types of blocks?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's first identifying them where they sit and then really getting their shadow side on board. So we all have a positive side and a shadow. There's a yin and the yang, right? There's both sides of things. So a lot of times the shadow side keeps them under grip and it keeps them living that story, believing them, having them believe that, no, you have to do this because it could be, well, your famous rock icon lived this tumultuous life and that's how they were successful. So it will start showing you these stories of which really, look, everybody has their own way to get to the island. And I think I was watching a Jerry Seinfeld bit. He's like, look, it doesn't matter if you swim, skydive, take a jet ski there. The idea is to just get to your island, a place of harmony, bliss, there's healthy relationships, a place where you can put your shields down and you're in a room full of people and you can just be and you feel love. And you can only do that through letting go, I believe. believe. And through layers, letting the layers like an onion, peeling off those layers little by little. It's not about a straight shot. It's not a drag race. I believe everything moves everything does move in a circular fashion here. So the earth spins in a circular fashion, the galaxy, the universe, everything's circular. And so I believe we plant seeds and then it just sort of starts to move in that direction. And if you stay that course in a healthy way, the layers themselves will just start to come off. But here's the problem. Some people, again, identify with that and they don't know how to let go, or they're in the cloud of it, because at the end of the day, your system in the body, right? This is why I learned biomechanics. It's designed to clean you at night. When you go to sleep, the body goes to work. It starts pushing out all the low energy dynamics that you've collected in the day. So you pick up this static when you go shopping at the grocery store, when you communicate with friends, bosses, colleagues, projects that you're working on, all that stuff. It's always an energy exchange. Even right now, I'm getting a bit of you, you're getting a bit of me. But if we don't unplug from these things and you're this walking, talking mess of toxicity filled with all the things that you house in your energy field of all the things you picked up. And so understanding that concept right there and understanding the me time is so important. So then we can understand what walls we're actually housing and then identify these blocks and then go to a practitioner that can help you maybe work through them and clear them a little bit so that you can actually have a fighting chance and come up over water. So when I'm working with somebody, I can say, oh my gosh, I see this trauma. It started at 6. Well, you just picked up a pattern. And what happens is this pattern, your system starts to overcompensate, almost like when you throw out a shoulder or a muscle, your body still needs to get through the day. So you start walking, limping, but it starts to overcompensate on the other side. The idea is when you pick up these patterns from people, whether they're your parents, a traumatic experience, it's blocking you from it. So it's not allowing you to address it. And it creates this pattern or program in the background, an alternate you become these little mini alternates of other things, other people, not you. And as we start clearing these patterns, these programs that are no longer needed out of the system, out of the biocomputer, then you, the driver who sits in the biocomputer, the avatar, can actually become more of you. Then that's when you become more empowered. You get your power back. You can stop people pleasing, start saying no to people, do the things that are actually good for you. And that's when you're empowered, when you're literally letting go of these old programs. Either I help clear it or I have practitioners that I'll send people to, because I'm not a one-stop shop for everything. It's a tailored approach. And I'm very big on shining a light on other people that have wonderful modalities and that specialize in certain things. I have my lane and I get them to where they need to go.
Wow. You explained that so well. I can visually see it.
Yeah.
I think people just don't realize they're carrying all that stuff with them. And the power of sleep, I never really thought about.
I agree. That was huge. I think there was a lot to be learned in just what you said.
To me, it's not that mystic. None of this work is, I've been the biggest, I'm more of a man of science in a sense. I have to you don't know how many times I've seen things that have floated in and I'm like, this is going to happen. And then a part of me is like, well, let's just wait. And then I'm really excited when it happens. And I've had a girlfriend that's like, why do you still get excited when I'm like, because I still don't know. I don't know how this works.
I love that. That's huge, honestly.
And to me, we're sitting in a machine of a biocomputer, and we need to understand a little bit more how it works from an energy perspective, because it's just pulling and pushing in energy, right? Energy goes in, it goes out. And what we fill the tank up with is what we get bogged down or we get lifted up in. And so to me, it's more scientific. It's not woo-woo. It's not mystical. We humans put the mysticism on it. I think when people talk about angels and all this stuff, we make it more fairy tale-esque than it is. I look at even angels as high potency beings that help and assist us while we're here. Maybe they work under God or a source of some sort. There's a hierarchy of development. And even here on the planet, there's majorities probably the students, and then there's a small percentage that are faculty and practitioners. And we're all just here to sort of move our way through things and at different levels. This is why there should be no competition. You can't compete against someone that's at a different development level than you. We're all on our own sort of path and journey and things like this.
And actually, I don't think that most people think about energy in that way at all. We're just not taught to talk about it, to think about it. And I think this conversation is so important because people need to start being aware of their energy, being responsible for their energy, and then doing something about their energy if they want to make change for themselves and within the world. So this is so important. And what Karen was saying, that what you just said about sleep, I don't think that most people have ever heard of.
But it makes sense, doesn't it? And it is probably because we have so much emotion and things that we're processing in our brains during the day that it needs the rest even more. I was going to ask you, Dustin, do you see above and beyond energy? Do you see spirit? Do you see angels? Do you see anything else?
Yes. Yeah. And I actually ramped up again as a kid. I would see beings. It's funny. I slept in the fetal position a lot because I'd always see like a woman sitting at the end of my bed or something, calm, cool, collect, and quiet, probably there for protection. But I would just see these things in the household or things around in other people's households. And some of it were not good. And I'm not going to that house. And some of them were really good. And you wanted to go into that house. That's typically what we're doing. Every person reads the energetics of someone's space. You're like, oh, I like it in here. That's you saying, I like the energy of the person radiates. When I go into places actually, there's a place in Los Angeles. It's the Self-Realization Center. It's Yogananda. And there's this wonderful, it's outdoors. It's called Lake Shrine. And when I walked into there, I'm like, ooh, this has a charge. There's high things that exist here. And I was in a session actually just down the block from that place. It's at a place, his name is Dr. Wagner, but he has other practitioners that work in there. And he's great at like doing biomechanics and doing a lot of the things that I've talked about. But there's a woman who does biofield tuning work. So you lay on the mat and she just rings these biofield tunes. She cleans up the aura, cleans up the energy around you, cleans up the family line, does all these wonderful things. Well, because she is in there with these high frequency tuning forks daily around the clock, it has a charge. The moment I walked into the office, all the practitioner doors were shut, but I walked right up to hers and I was like, I like what's behind this door. And the person that was giving me the tour, they're like, oh yeah, that's everybody's favorite room. And my first time with her, I just felt like these two presences that came in. They were about as tall as the Empire State Building-ish. They're taller than the building that we were in. And it just felt really high. And I just knew, but I didn't freak out or I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in awe of it, because there wasn't that like servant thing. It was very much a like vibrational match in a sense of them wanting to help humans on. It felt like warmth, compassion, genuine love, light, like almost when you get into bed and just a warm blanket over you. It's just this wonderful feeling that there's no drug that you could do to get there. It just felt like consciousness. It just felt like these two beings of consciousness softly came in like two pillars of light. They just were there to assist. It was the first time I've experienced anything at that caliber. And I do believe it was the location that I was in and the room. And I believe that there's these high frequency potency forces that do work with humans that are open and of a caliber and that live a cleaner lifestyle, not a toxic one, that can witness, that can feel, that can perceive. Now, are they around everyone? I believe yes. I believe that everybody has guides and guards and saints and sages all around them at all different times. I know I've seen family members that have passed on around loved ones that they come in when I'm working with people. And I know there's all these titles, mediumship and clairvoyance and all the things that we've talked about, psychic abilities. But to me, I just say energy reader. It's all energy. You're just perceiving energetics. You're an energy. If we get more highly attuned to these higher frequencies, then they're a like vibrational match and easier to detect.
I think that helps people understand what you're seeing, what you're feeling, and energy in general. You also mentioned kinesiology earlier in the conversation. Is that something else that you practice as well?
Yeah, I do it in a sense because someone comes in, I can see these things around them. I can see something blocking the shoulder or in the stomach or the digestion issues, whatever it is. I can see that. But I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, I see this. That's like the mechanic. Like, hey, we got all these problems in your car. It's going to be $1,000. You're like, sure you do. So I've had to go off and learn. I want a visceral experience. I want an actual tangible thing. And so I've learned applied kinesiology because what I'll do is I can look at it. I can see it. I can perceive it. But it's a great way to show someone else, okay, it's muscle testing basically, because the system knows, the body knows what's wrong and it knows where it's hiding things. And it knows basically it's usually screaming at you to let it go, but we don't listen. So I've learned it to show people when we put this word here on this chakra or the hip or whatever it is, boom, the arm goes down. The muscle is just weak. You're weak there. And then I do some clearing, right? I break up the massage gun, we do do some stuff. And then we retest it, same word, same spot, boom. And they feel it. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so, like, I can hang on that arm, right? I can do pull-ups on it. It's strong and steady. In their face, they just look at it, they're like, oh my gosh. Before I could take two fingers and barely push and it goes right down. And now I'm like hanging on it. And a lot of these clients that I have, people that will come in, they'll be from like places I'll never think of. They're like the military, people like high ups. They'll be even psychologists, people that are practicing in these areas that you would never believe that even believe in this stuff. And they're the ones that are coming like, oh yeah, I got these clients. I need some help. Or how do I address this? Or how do I clear me so I can help that, whatever that is. So it's very interesting. I've always thought, and this is why I hid out in corporate America. I didn't think that a lot of people believed in this stuff. So I just didn't want to be known as the weird guy. And turns out that actually people need it now more than ever. And land in the places that I never thought would happen. So again, people on creative projects, people in Hollywood, film, people that are working at these tech companies. So I've read a lot of people that work at Apple, Google, LinkedIn, all these big names. And they're like, hey, it feels like this in here, or I'm working on this project. How do I change it? How can I work with the team? How can I do it better? How can I refine? It's always about a refinement system. So you can just live a happier life.
Can you do this on Zoom? For people, the kinesiology, I always wondered, because I've done it before in my life as well, but it's been somebody actually physically doing that. How can you do that remotely?
So I'll do a lot of detection remotely, yes. And there's a ton of things that I can work with patterns and how to clear remotely. Now, when I obviously can't physically touch them through kinesiology, but there's other ways, there's other tools and tactics that I can have them do so they can see the difference. And so it doesn't always have to be in person. And then a lot of times, like I'll fly out and I'll work with people, or a lot of times people fly in here. They'll come to where I'm at and they'll book a few days. We'll do a couple sessions. So there's always a way to do it. And I bounce around a lot. So I'm here, Hawaii, New York. I'll just go, and there's always people that have lined up. And if there's enough people, I'll fly over and we'll get it done.
Wow.
When you talk about some of the ways that you take care of your own energy, is there anything that you can suggest to someone else to clear their energy? Is there any one thing that you would suggest someone do on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
Yeah, that's big. And I'll tell you the one, I think, blanket technique that works for me, and I practice in my own daily routine or weekly or whenever I feel needed, because I work with a lot of people and there's a lot of energy exchange. So one thing I do is I just imagine almost like a light coming, my own light coming out of my sit bones and then going into the earth, and maybe imagine it going into the core of the earth or wrapping around the crystals that exist underneath us. But whatever it is, it's into the planet, into the earth. And then I'll imagine a white light sort of coming out of me, almost shooting out of my head and tapping in, going through the sky, through space, and tapping into that white light, that source power, that divine essence. And through that, I'll pull that energy down and I'll meet them halfway. And then from there, I can just say, take a deep breath in the nose, breathe in that white light all the way through your body, and then lion's breath out. And when you do that, you say all stress out. So you're breathing all the stress out. And you do that a couple times, 3 to 5 times. And typically I'll see the imagery of what that stress is. And then after I breathe that out, I'll let that light charge move through the whole system into the earth, cleansing and clearing all the energy. And I'll actually picture maybe people that I've talked to or have hardships with, or people that I feel like I've connected with in a wrong way. I'll imagine a cord out of my stomach, almost like a plug that you'd plug into an iPhone jack. And I'll imagine 2 of these, just a cord coming out of the stomach and out of their stomach, and I'll just watch it evaporate. And so it's a way to unplug, because every time you speak with people, there's cords that are created, like silver cords. And this is how people feed on your energy. This is how you sort of know how psychic vampires come in, they deplete you, they leave with your energy and you're left with nothing. Or you'll detect people that call before the phone rings. They're sort of tapping on those wires that you're connected to. So people will have a lot of these plugs in them, all these open energy sources. So to me, it's about shutting down. Meditating is great, but if you're not cutting the cords and clearing the past, things that are the programs that are no longer needed, or the energy that's being siphoned out by maybe family members or old bosses or old situations, then you're constantly giving to that. It's sort of like these iPhone apps or apps in the background of your phone that are running that you don't need, and they're pulling the battery power every day. And so it's very much a conscious thing to clear those and then allow that white light to come through. And then afterwards, you just basically give gratitude for every person that you've met. They're all a bit of a reflection of you. Love them and let that reflection move on. But to me, I let it in, I do some refinement work, and then I allow it to go, because not every reflection that you've met in your life is needed today. It's time for new faces, new reflections to come in a positive way, in a healthy way, because a lot of times you've already learned those tumultuous lessons. And it's like being in 6th grade. We don't need 6th grade with us today. We let that go. And then we move into the 7th, and then we continue to move on. But it's best when you cut the old crops, let them go, and allow new faces and new opportunities to come in.
Oh my goodness. And I mean, just the idea of the cords. Think about how many I just was thinking in my own life that are probably still there that need to be cut.
I have this vision of this very tangled world that we're carrying around all of these unseen connections to people that we don't even want.
Yeah, that don't need it. So let's say a good exercise actually for anyone out there is after you end a conversation, you can do the cord cutting right away. And it's nothing negative. You're just saying, okay, I've turned off that we were on, and now it's time to turn that off, because I'm going to go into a different room with different different people or a different meeting. And so you can imagine that, or sometimes when you're laying in bed at the end of the day, and showers are great because it sort of cleans and cleanses a lot of that static that's in your field, in your aura. It cleans it, lets it go. It's washing the day away. And you lay in bed and you can just imagine all the people or conversations that you've had, and just like you said, a bundle of wires just coming out of their abdomen and yours, and just sort of take them out and just throw them and let them dissolve. It's just saying, we're not connected to them anymore. I need my downtime. I need to recharge my batteries now. And so getting in a habit of doing that daily, even if someone that you talked to at the bus stop or an Uber driver or a nonchalant conversation with a salesperson, just however brief or however long, you just, imagine their faces and clearing the cords and allowing it to go so they can also move on and they're not affected by your energy.
I love that. My mom told me once to imagine when you're taking a shower, that's white light coming down and that it's cleaning you out of all the negativity that's in your body, and that's all going down the drain as you're taking your shower. And she used to say, cleanse me and clear me and fill me with light. So I try to remember to do that sometimes in the shower, especially when I was commuting in that Penn Station. It came in really handy.
That, to me, that's an easier exercise. I'm going to write that one down. That's
that one. These are all such great tips, I think, especially the one about cutting the cord. So I think how many times do you come out of a bad meeting or meet somebody in the grocery store and you just have a negative experience? You don't even realize you're carrying pieces of that still with you. So I think that's a really good
Sure. And parents, programs that you've picked up from them, they always say, well, you're going to end up like everyone becomes their mother or their father. Well, because you've mimicked them actually. When you first come out, this is your first tribe. So you're mimicking their personalities, their traits, how they deal with situations, how they don't. And so those idiosyncrasies will come out because they're programs of theirs that you inherited, you brought it. And so a lot of times it's about cutting the idea. And it's not anything negative in a sense. It's because you still love them. You just don't want to mimic anymore. And the idea is to become more of you, right? The you, because when we come out of the womb, we're a sum total of the two bloodlines and all the aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters, all the people. So we have all these people. It's almost like I hear actors a lot of the times, they'll say, oh, I have these 3 idols, or these are the 3 main people. And then it's like, if you take those 3 and put them together, you can say, oh yeah, I can see that. They're just mimicking, pulling in, they're creating a program, and then they're shining that back out. That's acting. So to me, it's about doing what works when you need it, and then allowing to retire those programs and patterns and mimics out. And that's where clearing comes in. So that's when we work with clearing people. And it's about, again, getting your empowerment, bringing your power back, becoming more of you. And you wouldn't believe how your career ideas and path will change. You'll be more aligned with your own purpose and passion and belief system. Your strengths in doing that will go forward. Like you'll be backed by you.
When you talk about seeing colors and auras and so forth, do you think everybody can do that? Or do you think that goes back to some energetics on the planet right now have the ability to see that versus others? I was just thinking about that,
Yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like it's both actually. I feel that everybody comes in with a different development level or a different frequency. And through these frequencies and development levels, it allows their, let's just say, software to kick on. But everybody has the hardware. Everybody has precognitive abilities. Everybody has the body and the system comes in with that. It's almost like a vehicle. Every vehicle comes in with a radio and GPS system and all the features and functions that a vehicle will have today. Now, not everyone has access to those options. And so you might get a vehicle that doesn't have air conditioning or whatever it is. It doesn't have those things. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't upgrade to that, because it's possible in every vehicle, but not everyone has access to that based on one belief system. Your belief system will cut you right off, or other people's belief systems that have been instilled. If let's say you're brought up in a Christian family, and they say, well, no, if you're seeing things or you're feeling things, that's wrong. Only Jesus can do that. So to me, look, I believe in Jesus all day long. I actually call in Jesus the Christ. I call in Buddha, Krishna, Yogananda, all the saints, all the masters of light. But again, if you're in a certain religion or household, they're going to say, no, it's only this, or it's only that. To me, that's why I actually love the Self-Realization Center, because they have stones that have all the religions. I feel like it's all humans trying to connect into something higher, and everybody's getting a similar story, just in different languages and different understandings, and they're perceiving it differently. But the belief system will cut you off. So to me, it's about, again, carving out the other people, what's been instilled in you. Because look, if you're born in India, you'd have those belief systems. If you're born in a different part of the world, you would inherit that from that energy pool. So everyone has has it there. And when you're ready to say, well, I'm open to more, it's really just being more connected to the biocomputer that you're in, because it comes with the hardware already built in. It's up to you when you're ready to do the software upgrade. And when you do that, then you just start having experiences. And look, everyone does this to some degree. When you go on a first date, the moment they walk in the room or the restaurant, or even walking toward you from across the parking lot, your system's already reading them. Oh, their picture looked like this, but now when they're in person, now you're reading their energetics. It's like, oh, now it's this, now it's that. Maybe you're really excited and now you're kind of let down, or maybe you just didn't think of it and then you met them in person and you're like, oh my God, they're so much better than I expected. But you're already doing this. You know when it is to walk on the other side of the road because someone approaching doesn't feel right. Your psychic feelers are already at work, at play. It's just, are you listening to your intuition? Are you listening to what the system's telling you? So to me, the biggest thing I could leave anyone with is get to know the system, the avatar that you're in. It has amazing potential and capabilities and abilities. So when you start to get to know that there's a difference between you and the system that you're sitting in, you're the host of it. It's alive. This body, this thing, it's the living, breathing tissue. It's alive on its own, and it will do what you tell it. And it's the one that hears you every day, and you're the one that's programming it. So if you're like, I hate that, I don't believe in that, it's going to say, okay, great. I will not give you any experiences like that. In fact, I will move you away from that. Or if you're in a bad relationship, the survival mind will say, look, you were brought up in a tumultuous household. Divorce looks horrible. We don't ever want to go through that. Don't worry. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to make sure you never get into a relationship with commitment, and to keep you safe. I want to keep you safe. I want to make sure you never open that heart up and experience that, to be vulnerable to where that could potentially happen. And then it keeps you dating the wrong men or the wrong women or the whatever, or alone all the time.
I love you're doing is you're bringing sort of a different perspective, a very non-woo-woo perspective to what you do. And I think that that's probably why so many people are attracted to you, because you're giving them very logical ways of describing energy as opposed to using real life experiences and real life things, in other words, to bring them to life, which I think is really helpful for those who don't know a lot about this stuff. Do you encourage the people who come to you, Dustin, to tap into their own energy as well? And if so, how?
I encourage people to remove blocks so they have the abilities or capabilities to tap into their full potential. I worked with someone yesterday and they're holding on to their mother's passing that happened a few years ago. And it was very clear. I said, look, your system, or you're telling your system to hold on to this grief because you believe when you let go and you heal and you're happy that you're not going to be close to your mother anymore that passed away of cancer. So you're holding on to the sadness and the loss. And it's a way of not letting her go. But it's derailing your life. Now, I'm not saying don't grieve for sure, because grief, again, I just believe that's there. When a person leaves, whether it's a relationship or they're out of the body, they left, they're gone, they're taking their energy back with them. When a person says this relationship's over, I want a divorce, they're going to go on and they're going to take their energy with them. They're not leaving it behind. They're going to put it in their next affairs and their next things. And you're going to feel a hole, a void, and a vacuum in you. This is when we break out the Haagen-Dazs and we try to fill it up and we can't. So what we need to do is understand that we now need to let that go naturally through grief, through crying, through process, through journaling, through all these wonderful things that we can do, and then fill it with our own stuff. Because we live in a biocomputer, it works through information and processes and it runs on energetics. So, hey, look, even the lowest things, people run on depression all day long. They're running on that fuel. It's like going to the fuel pump. There's like these few different options. Do you want the low grade? Do you want the mid grade? Or do you want the supreme stuff? So to me, when you start processing out and allowing it to let go, then the new charge, the new essence, the new abundance, the new opportunities start to come in, start to fill your system up. And now you're a different vibrational match. It's almost like the system, like the body, it takes the food. When you eat food, it takes the nutrients out and it discards what it does not need. That's how the system works. That's how it's designed in this planet. Every living organism works in the same capacity, the same way. So understanding that, it's just simple. It's understanding how it works. It's fuel in, fuel out. It's about letting go. And again, going back to the girl that couldn't let go of her mom, her understanding that, it was saying, no, look, now it's at the point where it's been enough time where now it's becoming toxic. It's derailing you. So I worked with her. I only did one session. I can feel about how many sessions someone needs. She needed 6. So she did 1. Within that week, she felt really good in the first 2 days. And then she just like had a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, basically crying for about 5 days. And she said, is this normal? I said, absolutely. It's your system letting go. Because when you cry, it's your emotional center you're taking all that stuff out. It's pushing it out. It's letting go. And that's where crying comes in. That's why a lot of men have problems problems because we're told we're not allowed to cry. We have to shove it in, push it down, keep it in. Now they're holding all the BS. And good luck finding another partner that wants to deal with all, not only your old traits, but the shit you're not letting go of. Who wants to do that? Nobody. I don't want to do that. So when you let go of you or all the stuff that you don't need, like the system does with food, right? It's not like you just walk around like not going to the bathroom. You got to let it out. When you drink enough water, you got to go to the bathroom. So there's going to be more water. There's going to be more food. There's going to be more relationships. There's going to be more opportunities as soon as you discharge and allow out to let go.
Wow. I mean, it totally makes sense. It's totally logical.
It is.
I think it's more simple in this world than it is. We're the humans and we make things complicated.
Well, and I think what you just said too, that for every person, their prescription is different. So when they come see you, some people need 1 session, others need 6, whatever it is. And then each week there's something else they're working on. And that may mean crying. It may mean laughing. Who knows?
Yep.
But it's some sort of release, whatever that release needs to be.
Yep. And most likely you don't know what it is and you're lying to yourself or you're lying to your system or your system's blocking it and not letting you see it because it's too tumultuous for you to deal with, where you wouldn't be able to get up to work every day and handle your family matters and do all these things. So it blocks it. It allows you to go do those things. But now you're running on, let's take an 8-cylinder engine. Now you're running on like 3 cylinders or 2 cylinders or maybe 1. Some people can't. They're just enough to survive and they come home, they go right to bed or they can't move. They can't do it. They're like, I don't know what's wrong. Maybe I'm just getting old. Most people say I'm just getting old. You know, some of the best practitioners, they're in their mid 70s. Some of them are pushing 80 and they're getting up every day. They're jogging. They're seeing like 10 clients a day and then they're riding their horses and they have girlfriend. They're just thriving. They're out there windsurfing. It's not an age thing. It's an energy thing. You have a physical body, then you have an emotional body. When the physical body gets full of stuff, it discards things. We understand that because we witness it every day. When your emotional body gets filled up with stuff, we don't understand that technology yet. Not the masses don't anyway. And we don't understand when we release the emotional body. It's like your phone sort of building up with too many photos or something. You got to get more gigs. Really, you just got to clear the cache. And when you clear the emotional body, you allow room for new love, new romance, new film projects, new dating. And so when you're constantly, to me, it's all breath, right? We breathe in, we breathe out. Your aura energy field, it breathes in every 7 seconds, pulls energy out, pushes it out. It's breath and it's experiences. We breathe them in and typically humans just hold them and we don't breathe them out. So, you know, it's finding ways to help breathe out, exhale, stress, things that don't behoove you anymore.
And it's so universal. It really is. Everybody can do this. It doesn't take time or money. And if you can afford to get that extra help, that's going to just help you move through it more quickly and probably see things you can't necessarily see on your own. But if everyone just breathing in and breathing out intentionally, then they themselves could start to feel better with the intention of wanting to release.
And letting go. The moment you wake up, the power is in the decision. The moment you decide something, like the guy for the first client I worked with professionally, he made a decision. He drew a line in the sand and said, well, I'm not doing it. If that's getting in the way of my happiness and my future, I'm done with that. It's different than say, I'm going to quit that. I'm going to work on that this year. No. You get to a place where you're done and you make a decision. Your system will say, okay, good. We'll let go of this stuff and we'll expect some triggers and crying and trying to maybe address some of these people or have conversations. But also after that, we're going to give you a whole new blank canvas and you can go painting anyway.
Wow. I mean, how many people are carrying stuff around like that they don't even realize is preventing them from getting what they want or living their best life?
Every person on the planet. And there's almost 8 billion of us.
All of these tools are so helpful. I'm breathing better right now.
Yeah, I know. And I can't even believe.
I love all these conversations. I love you guys so much.
Honestly, I'm so grateful to be connected to you, for others to now know you and to find you at jamesintuitive.com. So thank you. We are excited to continue to have more conversations, work together in the future.
So I love doing these things. I love giving back to the listeners, and I'll do a deal with your listeners. And if they go to my website, jamesintuitive.com, or they can even find that on my Instagram page with Mr. Dustin James, I'm happy to give 30% off to any listener that types in podcast fun on my website. So just go on there and type in podcast fun and you will get 30% off to any listeners here today. So again, I'm in this for service. I'm not in it. You know, the money's the outcome. That's the exchange, but I never let that get in the way of working with someone and their needs. And so I'm very much, that's my why. It's being of service to all the good stuff in the world.
Thank you so much, Dustin. Thank you.
Great.
Cannot wait to talk to you again soon.
Wonderful. So lovely to talk to both of you. And let's do this more. Let's talk more. I love
We will.
Definitely.
We will.
Bye for now.
Bye.